Hey everybody, welcome back. In today's video, I want to have a look at Litecoin, but before I do, I first want to thank today's sponsor, FairDesk. Now, FairDesk is an exchange, and if you're interested, you can go click the link in the description for a deposit bonus and my copy trade. I make a trade on all the alts I review, so if that's something you don't want to miss, go check it out. Now, getting straight into Litecoin, it was about a month ago since we last made our video, mid-September. I think it was the 18th, and ever since then we have basically been going down. We put in a sort of a lower high, and then we put in a higher high 2 weeks later, and then I think this conflict or war was announced, and ever since then we've been going down, and we're now about 10% below, or sorry, we opened today 10% of a drop since our last video, which was a month ago. And we've seen Litecoin has been following this downward trend for about 2 weeks, but this isn't unlike the rest of the crypto space where a lot of other alts have been going down much harder, much quicker. Litecoin has seemed to be somewhat resilient in these last 2 weeks. So if you want to, be proud of Litecoin for something, you can maybe use this, but ultimately it hasn't really done too much. It's still been following this resistance line down, and even though it managed to break above it once here, it's kind of a fake out, and ultimately it was a test, and it got rejected. But I don't want to focus too much on the short-term price action of Litecoin. I want to make another sort of macro zoom out sort of video, because I feel now is very pivotal in the crypto space. I think now is crunch time. Over the next few months, I've been saying for months, Q4 and Q1 of next year are sort of when we're going to see lows in the crypto space, in my opinion. And if you've been DCAing since 2021, you don't care about this. You've just been putting the same amount of money in each week and you're hoping that the price will go above your average buy price. That's fine. But for those of you that have held onto most of your dry powder and haven't used it yet, like me, that hold mainly US dollar and are waiting to put it into the market, this video is definitely for you, and these next few videos over the next few weeks and months will be for you, because I don't just look at Litecoin, I look at a lot of altcoins, and I will be looking at them in macro, because we can basically see here. I mean, first of all, I'll point out the most interesting part. This here represents where we've dropped down into our deep value zone last cycle. And of course, this white line is where we peaked in the 2017 cycle. This white line is where we peaked in the 2021 cycle, so it's about the 4-year cycle difference between the two. I mean, you can sort of move these bars which way you want. I mean, if you want to go 4 years, we should maybe move this bar here to this peak, but that wasn't, it's all-time high, so I wanted to put it on its all-time high. So this is about 3.5 years, 3 years, 8 months here, and this is also about 3 years, 8 months. So not quite the all-time high. Sorry, not quite the 4-year cycle, but it's kind of more interesting for me in this way, I think, because I wanted to look at it as first peak, second peak, and then bear market, basically. And this is what we had here. We had first peak, second peak, bear market. And one thing as well I noticed, I want to say before I move on, is that this cycle seemed to be a lot more do it quickly and go higher, or, drop lower faster. We saw here, this rally here, that's basically this. We saw this happen, it went much higher, but it did it much quickly. And then it went straight back down in more or less the same period of time. Again, this sort of bull run where we had good price action from LTC in 2017, it went straight up and then straight down. This sort of retest here, or this this little peak up again, was done in a few days, couple of weeks, and here, yeah, sure, it took longer to build up, and we had our second sort of peak again, but we spent a long time building up to it, and there was a lot of there was time that Litecoin spent not going down, and it spent much longer not going down compared to this year. And again, we basically see that everywhere, where Litecoin touches its bottom basically more or less a year after its peak, less. And if we go here, we can see Litecoin doesn't even break down below, but gets close and bounces off its sort of deep value range after 400 days, so an extra 60 days. It doesn't even break down below here, although I ultimately think these are equivalent. We can see this white line as well shows where we broke down for the second time into this deep value range. If we zoom in here, we can see we've passed this white line. Now again, if you want to move this sort of 4 months forward, you could maybe argue and say, well, we've got another 4 months, but this is August, so you basically have until the end of the year to drop down into this deep value range, from August to December, which would be fair. But again, these things don't play out the same. It could be 5 months, it could be 3 months, it could be 10 months. Nobody knows for certain, but Litecoin is definitely sort of on the way back down, in my opinion. I mean, these peaks sort of look a bit like Bitcoin in the sense that it has its sort of initial peak here, drops back down. It spends a bit of time, peaks up again, drops back down, climbs back up, and then potentially, depending on what happens, it goes up or it goes down. I personally think it will go down. I think Q4 is where a lot of alts and the crypto space generally does poorly in the pre-halving year. So I think this is the way that it goes, and of course a lot of alts will follow Bitcoin. And we're already seeing this in the altcoin market at the moment, where Bitcoin isn't even particularly going down. In fact, it's higher than where it was a few weeks back, but altcoins are still going down. So dominance is moving into Bitcoin, and this altcoin space is bleeding, and the less liquidity, the more it drops, because the more people that sell, the less people there are to buy that bag off them. So it moves the price down further, and it keeps it down there for longer. But again, this year has played out slower. This cycle, has played out slower for LTC than it did the last cycle. So we could see something like this play out as well. I want to have a look at LTC on its Bitcoin pair, and this kind of, to me, is very depressing. It doesn't scream bullish for me at the moment, and you can basically ignore this line. It's not really very important. We see here 2017 LTC. We can obviously see where it enters into its bull run. It has like a big explosive move, and for the whole year, basically for 2018 and for half of for 2017 and half of 2018, it just goes up, and it even has a little revival here late 2019 on its Bitcoin pair, and then by the end of the year, it's back down to its lows. So over 2 years, it basically its displacement is almost zero, but we've had great price action on its Bitcoin pair in between that. And if we swap back to the USD again, we can see that 2018, even 2017, great year for Litecoin on its USD pair. I mean, if you were buying it for $8 and you're selling it for 50, you're not doing bad. If you're selling it for 90, you're not doing it bad. But if you held it till 2018, you're selling it for 300, you're doing brilliant. So again, we see Litecoin do good for all of 2017 and half of 2018. We have the little resurgence in 2019, and then it goes back to nothing. If we then have a look at basically where Litecoin peaks during the 2021 bull run, we see this. This is its peak against Bitcoin during the 2021 bull run. It is nothing compared to this over here. And for me, it's very, very bearish, because ultimately you're much better off just holding Bitcoin all the way down. If you bought Bitcoin in, August of 2019, you would have made more money holding that than you would have Litecoin at its peak on its Bitcoin pair. You would have made more money, percentage-wise. Your money would have gone up more in Bitcoin than Litecoin, and that is not really supposed to be the case. Bitcoin is supposed to make you a lot of money. If you just want to hold Bitcoin, you buy it in the bear run and you sell it in the bull run, it's kind of the safer option, and you're going to make money for sure, but your altcoins will often have much higher percentage moves, and they will often either be before or after Bitcoin, and you'll see that there's like a reversion on the Bitcoin pairs in previous cycles, like here, where we have a reversion and Litecoin gains value on Bitcoin, so the chart goes up, and then during bear runs, price goes down. Really, during this bull run, Litecoin should have gone up much further, and we see all of the alts that were something last cycle went up big time on its Bitcoin pair. And again, this sort of is reflected in its USD pair, where Litecoin didn't really put in any new all-time highs. It retested its old high. Bitcoin put in a new time high, an all-time high. It actually exploded through its last previous all-time high. So you were much better off definitely holding Bitcoin than you were Litecoin. And again, we haven't really seen anything great play out either. From this peak here, from Litecoin's peak on its BTC pair, it's currently down 70%, about 75% if you go peak to trough. It's basically the same as all the other alts. Like if you were to go to AVAX on its BTC from peak to trough, it would probably be about 92 or 93% down. So you can say, oh, well, Litecoin didn't go down as much as Avalanche did or as much as Cardano did, but it still went down 75%. And you still could have held Bitcoin and made more money during the bull run. During the bear run, and then just held Bitcoin, and you would have made more money holding Bitcoin than you would have Litecoin, which is usually not a good sign. It's like alts are supposed to overtake Bitcoin briefly, usually during the bear run. That's what happens, and they put in great all-time highs. That's where all this crazy money, that's where all these crypto billionaires come from. I mean, unless they were really old and OG, you're not getting many crypto billionaires that were billionaires because of Bitcoin. It's because of Dogecoin or Matic or Avalanche or whatever, low cap or this, that, and the other, Shiba, everything like that. You're not getting them off Bitcoin in the last really 4, 5, 6 years because Bitcoin's become sort of too much of a safety asset. It's the safest place to be in the crypto space compared to everything else, with the exception of dollar, of course. So again, not a great picture being painted by Litecoin this last bull cycle, and to be honest, I don't know what to expect for the next one. Maybe we could see a big move like this. Maybe we just see it follow this, basically this very dead looking trend of not really doing much on its Bitcoin pair. I mean, having it revisit its all-time highs of $300 is great. If you're buying now at $60 and you sell perfectly at $400, you know, that's awesome. You make a 6x. But historically, we've seen if you just put that in Bitcoin, you're doing much better. And even, you know, sort of the end half of 2019 is sort of even not a great place to buy Litecoin on its Bitcoin pair. And well, it is if it returns to these values, but if you're buying Litecoin here, you're not going to get many opportunities to make a profit. As we saw, in the only time it then went above this level was obviously immediately afterwards, but also only in the peak of its bull run. So again, much better off holding Bitcoin than Litecoin. And Litecoin is one of the rare exceptions where I would say, oh, well, Avalanche, put in new all-time highs last run, so I can understand why they might buy it at this price, because if it still returns to its all-time highs, it'll 10x, or, you know, assuming that it breaks above, like a lot of people will assume, you'll make good money. Litecoin, you can't really assume that anymore because it hasn't broken above its last all-time high, its last cycle high. It's very much like XMR, Monero, that sort of oscillates within this range. It looks a lot like Litecoin. And on its Bitcoin pair, it's also very similar. Like, it first has hype when it gets listed on exchanges, and then nobody really wants much to do with this old coin, so it kind of just dies on its Bitcoin pair because it returns to its highs in the bull run, but on its Bitcoin pair, Bitcoin outperforms it, usually. So, a bit of a depressing video for Litecoin. I'm not saying that it's not valuable or it's not useless, but if you're chasing money, and let's be realistic, that's what most people are doing. If you're trading crypto, you're trying to make money for yourself. I don't think it's in Litecoin. It could be considered maybe more of a safe bet where you can sort of say, okay, well, we're here, so we can expect this, that, and the other, and oh, well, you can at least assume that it goes back up to 300. Maybe that's something you want to do. Again, you never can assume anything with these markets, but you might say, oh, well, I'll bet it'll go back to 300, so I don't want to be too risky, so if I buy some at 600 now, I'll still make a 5x whatever. That's up to you to do, but to be honest, with how Litecoin's playing out on its BTC pair, it might not even make it back to these highs like it did last cycle. It might be $300. It might even be below that. I don't know. We haven't dipped into our red zone yet, so we might not dip into our green zone next cycle. It's all situational and no one can tell you how it's going to play out. But that about wraps it up for this video, guys. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. Comment down below what you think of Litecoin. And if you want to sign up with FairDesk, please do so with the link in the description. It really helps out the channel. Take care and peace.